The term stick the landing probably gets used too often in TV, at least in the sense that it starts to lose its meaning. But it comes up for a reason. You have to invest time in a show that comes out week, and when things are working as they should, each step along the way adds to the impact when you get to the destination. It can be a frustrating process at times, but hopefully from watching other shows, you know there's always potential for the kind of payoff you don't get from other forms of media. So to put it out there in the beginning, the Silo Season 2 finale got the job done. The two stories that have been split throughout the season are finally reunited. The answers the finale gave us reveal a larger mystery, and a promise from the creators to explain why the silos are there in the first place. Beyond that, the setup was worth it. The key moments felt larger than life, and even though it ended with another major cliffhanger, enough happened before that to make it feel satisfying. It left me wanting more, just like the first season's ending, and it doesn't lose any momentum going into season 3 as far as I'm concerned. One detail I really enjoyed was that the episode opens with the relic, Pete Nichols looking down at Juliet's watch that Bernard gave him a few episodes ago, and ends with one, the duck Pez dispenser that has played a recurring role in the series. These items are loaded with history. From the 20 episodes of this show we've all been watching. The watch was broken when George gave it to Juliet as a gift. She fixed it and then clung to it after he died, and now it's been passed to her father when she was presumed dead after being sent outside to clean. The Pez dispenser also originated with George and went from mechanical to the up top. It was last seen when Sims gave it to his son. We now see where it came from, sort of. The details as far as what's on screen is something I'll come back to, but its origin is in a time before the silos were built, and before the world outside became toxic or whatever has been going on out there for at least the 352 years Bernard told Lukas the silos had been there. Last season was about the question, what if everything you thought you knew was a lie? This season was about who can access information, and what happens when that gets out. The way things have been set up, incomplete information can be dangerous because people are ready to act once they know they've been lied to. Earlier in the season, I mentioned that they were setting Pete Nichols up for something, not considering it might play out like this. Knox and Shirley go to see him with the news from Lukas that his daughter might still be alive. They say they need his help, and when he asks what could be more important than what he's already doing as a doctor, the answer is war. For much of this season, the silo has been on the brink of that, but if you look back, it's mostly been avoided by one side outmaneuvering the other. In the last couple of episodes, Bernard thinks he could snuff out the rebellion once and for all by turning Walk into his snitch due to her love for Carla. He had the upper hand with her ex-wife locked away and unfettered access to everything that happened in her workshop through the camera surveillance. All he had to do was wait for the rebels to reveal their plans, and early in the finale, they appear to do just that. The rebels somehow working together with Walk to deceive Bernard was something I thought might be happening, but I couldn't say for sure. That made this work really well, as did the previous heist-style capers from earlier episodes. The mechanicals make Bernard believe that the plan is to rig the generator to blow, and that they're geared up for a face-off at the barricade that would last long enough to get that ready. Thinking he has the drop on them, Bernard makes the fatal mistake of sending all the raiders down to crush them at the barricades. It looks like a decisive victory. Everyone important is taken into custody and brought up the stairs, and the raiders secure the generator. This leads Rob and Camille to worry that they picked the wrong side, but we also find out they delivered Billings' message. We still don't know what that means, but we know the deputies arrested the former sheriff after Bernard accused him of being a traitor. When Odmondson brings the rebels into the cell up top, he outs Walker as the snitch, thinking that he's betraying her in front of all of her comrades. When she asks to see Bernard, Carla says she hopes he sends her outside because she's not in on it at all and really does think that she's been betrayed. The thing about the split season is that keeping Juliet stuck for so long made us think she'd probably be right, and that if she didn't get back, Silo 18 would collapse like 17 did. So when Walk gets in front of Bernard and says she wants to tell him a story, it really feels like something should happen. She explains that they have a sign language in mechanical from constantly having to work together around the noisy generator. They used that to have an entirely different conversation while he thought he was intercepting their plans. While she's delivering him the bad news, she starts watching the clock timing things out. This is all cut with what Pete is doing on the stairs after agreeing to help Shirley and Knox. He has Hank pretend to be an injured raider who needs immediate medical attention that he can't get below the barricade. He manages to make his way past, but we see something fall off the stretcher as they're leaving. By the time Walk is queuing up her big reveal, we find out they're carrying a bomb, and the plan is to blow the stairs. A plan that can no longer happen unless someone manually triggers the explosives. Bernard's reaction is fantastic when her countdown reaches 0 and nothing happens. He taunts Walk, saying, "That was dramatic," and does the equivalent of an end zone dance while celebrating her failure. At the same time, Pete removes the watch and tells Hank to return it to Juliet with a heartfelt message about her being perfect her whole life. Hank tries to get him to let him take his place, but absolutely not. And then Pete sets off the bomb, which ends his life. It also destroys the stairs between levels 90 and 92 and traps all the raiders below that, effectively winning the conflict for the rebels, who are now up top and backed up by all the deputies that Paul was able to bring over to their side with his message. There were several moments wrapped up in this. Pete's final words and sacrifice, Bernard's hubris that immediately blows up in his face, and Walker getting to celebrate after everything looked so bleak when the bomb didn't go off initially. They all landed and felt right, but then you start to wonder how it could end there. The answer is it doesn't. And this isn't even the worst thing that happens to Bernard on this day. Lukas has been making his way back from below the silo, where he found the door and received a message from what the show is calling the algorithm. After clearing some hurdles along the way, he finds Bernard and tells him to pretend like they're having a serious conversation, but just to listen and not say a word. Then he leans in and whispers, because if it hears this, we're dead. We hear him say that he solved the code, and that's it. But whatever he says that we don't hear breaks Bernard immediately. It cuts back to him saying it's true. That's why Meadows quit, and that's why I quit. And then Lukas walks off and seems like a different person when we next see him stop by his mom's place for another visit. She asks if he did what he needed to do, and after a short pause, he tells her it turns out it didn't need doing. Bernard is visibly shaken to his core. He looks at the number 18 keychain, and we see that it isn't flashing. He walks right past his director of security as if he wasn't there, and just zombie shuffles along until Rob stops him to find out what Lukas said. He doesn't answer the question. Instead, he just says, "Hey Rob, still want to be my shadow? Here you go," and gives him the key and the code to the vault. He adds that he was very loyal until he wasn't, and just goes about his business, which includes grabbing his suit and gun and heading to the sheriff's department to have a nice sit. In any other situation, Rob would be thrilled to get what he wanted finally. In this one, he decides to ask Lukas what he told Bernard to break his brain, bringing his gun to expedite the answering process. At around the same time, Bernard pulls his and fires off a shot into the ceiling of the sheriff's station, telling everyone to get out. Lukas asks if Rob is the shadow now, and if Bernard gave him the key. He says Bernard made the mistake of thinking everything was okay because it wasn't lighting up. But he was wrong. It's not lighting up because it's over. And eventually, he just walks right up to Rob's gun to say he can't explain further. He adds that he can kill him and his mother if he wants to, because it doesn't matter. He encourages him to go to the vault and see the legacy before it's too late. This would probably be fairly annoying if we didn't have more information than the people Lukas is talking to. I'm not saying you can understand things completely based on what's happened, but knowing the safeguard exists and learning more about it from Silo 17 helps quite a bit. Before we go there, other than Bernard waving his gun around and just sort of generally behaving like a man with nothing to lose, the major conflict in 18 has essentially been sorted out. The one wild card left is Patrick Kennedy, who started to get some of the other people who were in custody riled up before the deputies freed everyone. This started with what I would consider one of the show's less elegant moves, and what I think is an attempt to make that flash of the cleaning screen on the display that happened before the power went out in season 1 mean something. While Kennedy is shouting about it being safe outside, Sandy comes up to say she saw it too, referring to that scene that always felt a little out of place. So by the time everyone is freed from the holding cell, Patrick has a group together who are itching to go outside. They come into the cafeteria looking pretty unstoppable, as everyone who doesn't want to go out catches a beating. For a new twist on an old favorite, instead of spending the episode trying to leave Silo 17 like she has for the entire season, Juliet spends most of it getting ready to leave. It's kind of the same. Things keep coming up to slow her down, and her fears of what might be happening in Silo 18 basically are. And while she's not heartless, she also doesn't have time or the bandwidth to focus on anything else than completing her task. It's also different, or maybe she's just different, and I mean, we know it's the finale and she'll actually make it outside this time. So if nothing else, it feels different. They go back to Solo's apartment for the first time that he's been there in a long time. The finale held on to the bond that was solidified between these two. And while Jules is possessed with the need to leave at this point, she lets him stay behind and spend some time there when he asks. He starts to remember his parents while he's there, and there's quite a bit of quality solo time before he discovers a piece of paper that mentions the safeguard procedure. He goes after Juliet, telling her this might be the only way to save Silo 18. He eventually remembers it was a pipe that came from outside. His parents figured out that they had to cap it because it had enough poison in it to kill the entire silo. They look for it on a map and realize it was on level 14 where his mom used to work. They run over and we see they're outside Judicial, but they hear the explosion in Silo 18 before they go in. Solo tells her she's out of time, and they rush back to get her suit so she can get ready to leave. Before she can do that, she finally sorts out Audrey after watching her tear into Eater again. We found out her real name is Hope, and while there isn't an extra suit to bring her along, Jules defends her, yelling at Audrey, saying none of the things she blames Hope for are her fault. She didn't ask for this, none of them did, but if they need to be angry, they should be angry at the people who built the silo and put them in it. Her point is that all they're trying to do is survive, but they'll never be able to do that if they don't trust the people they're stuck with. You can see this get through, and the fact that we know her father was killed setting off the bomb by the time she gets to the part about the people she's stuck with, her friends, her family, her dad, it gives this all some emotional heft. It's another really good scene, and it feels necessary before she leaves these kids behind. I mean, even Solo is a kid on some level, and they are provisioned, I guess, as far as we can tell, but she's right to not lie about knowing whether or not she can come back for them. She really doesn't know what'll happen when she walks out the door. The new suit she found turned out to be damaged, and her shouting set up a slight diversion so that she can't find it or Solo when she goes looking for the backup suit. Her fear kicks in because how many times has something like this happened now? But when she finds him, that sets up another one of those misty-eyed moments when she finds out he was just down in the water testing the suit to make sure it didn't have any leaks. They share one final scene where he says he knows why she told the kids what she did, but come on, really, you're gonna come back, right? After all their unsuccessful attempts, they can finally share a real hug, and she tells him nothing is gonna stop her from trying to come back for them before she leaves. Things are about to collapse back in 18. The Kennedy faction has fashioned a ram to take out the door and would probably succeed in killing everyone if she didn't come over the hill right when she did. I've watched this quite a few times by now, and it hasn't stopped working yet. Everything about it works. The looks on Knox and Shirley's faces, and on everyone's faces for that matter. The way she stops at the top of the hill and looks in that direction, having no idea what's going on inside. She passes Holston and Allison, and it's at that point that you see that it starts to set in for everyone. They're seeing Juliet return, and then she freaking cleans. She holds up a sign telling them it's not safe outside, and that ends that. It's over. It's what the silo needed to bring it back together. And the only person that we see that isn't completely overwhelmed with emotion is Bernard. Yeah, he is motivated to act though. She starts to try to force the door open and doesn't appear to make any progress before it starts to open on its own. When she gets to the bottom of the stairs, she's met by Bernard in his suit and sees he's on his way out. At the same time inside, we watch Sims enter the vault with Camille and his son. The algorithm asks him why he's there. He says he wants to save the silo, and it says that it does too. Then in a move I didn't see coming, he tells him he has to take his son and leave, but Camille can stay. And that's all we really see. I suppose it makes sense if this thing is keeping tabs on what's happening and believes Camille has the silo's best interest at heart. Plus it lines up with what Rob said about people seeing him as the enemy. But it's the kind of development that if you told me at the beginning of the season it was going to happen, I wouldn't have believed you. I don't think we can say exactly what's happening here, but it seems like Camille is Bernard's replacement. The conversation he has with Juliet is tense, and the fact that he still has his gun adds to that. He's there because after he realizes the algorithm can end it all at any time, his life and his devotion to the order stop making sense. He just wants to go outside to feel free one time. It sounds a lot like what Judge Meadows was saying. He tells her that she can't save them, the people in the silo, because it's out of her hand. It's out of all of their hands. And then she tells him she knows about the poison and the safeguard procedure. This information she got from Jimmy really could make all the difference based on the reactions of Meadows, Lukas, and Bernard when they found out the whole game was rigged, to use Salvador Quinn's words. She knows about the safeguard, but she doesn't know the who or the why. He knows the who, but doesn't know why and says he doesn't care. She gets him to lower the gun and starts to explain that she figured something out and might be able to prevent the safeguard from going through, but right at that same time the door starts to close. She jumps in without thinking, not wanting to get locked outside. He tells her that she'll be burned alive because of the cleansing process. They both still end up inside and dive to the ground as the flames consume everything. It doesn't show us their fate, and really Bernard is the only one we really need to wonder about surviving. This should kill anyone inside, but Juliet's suit, being for firefighters, will probably explain how she'll live, because it's Rebecca Ferguson, so of course she'll be back next season. This is all a bit different than how it played out in the books, and I know Bernard's fate there, but I'm honestly not sure if it'll turn out to be the same. He's Tim Robbins, and he delivered a fantastic performance this season, so you might want to keep him around. But I think if he did survive, he would have to be severely burnt while only wearing the cleaning suit. It's fire. Even if her suit gave him some protection, he couldn't come out of there unscathed. My initial thought was that he'd die, but rewatching it, I don't know, it felt like you could see them working together in future seasons. The cliffhanger is not the end though. Instead, we go back in time to a year that could be close to the present day and head into a bar in Washington, D.C. A young congressman named Daniel meets a woman named Helen for what looks like a date. We pick up several interesting details, but the contrast to life in the silo is so striking that it's hard to know what's important. They mention a dirty bomb attack, and as the conversation continues, we learn she's a reporter who wants to know if there are plans to strike back against Iran. This is something he doesn't want to talk about or can't talk about. And while there's a whole thing going on where he pretends he didn't look her up, he definitely did. So on some level, he knew he was coming to meet a reporter either way. He does leave when she tries to steer the conversation in that direction and gives her a gift he says he panic bought on the way out. It's the Duck Pez dispenser that hints that she'll eventually take it with her into Silo 18 so that it can make its way to George years down the road. This is a tease, but as I mentioned at the beginning, it's a promise from the creators that they're going to explain how the silos came to be. If you're unfamiliar with the book series, the second book does that, but it also doesn't really feature Juliet's story because it's a prequel. That's put on hold until the third book. Showrunner Graham Yost has said that they've already worked this out and know how they're going to make it less jarring than doing a straight flashback season, but we'll have to wait until it comes out to see how the government gets involved and what part this Georgia congressman who studied engineering and this reporter, how they fit into the picture. And I think that's a great place to leave things. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.